And I was just dying to be able to have a conversation with another makeup artist that would be friendly. If you don't have people asking you to really research something and people whom you respect, right, then you're going to get stuck in your own techniques. We all know this, by the way. Nobody's different. Mm-hmm. And the luck is that collaboration.
Cathyanne, thank you so much for joining me on my podcast today.
I'm delighted, really. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Honestly, no, thank you. For anyone that's listening or looking at you right now, I connected with you over Clubhouse during the pandemic, and you were a dark horse. I didn't really know who you were. You know, I was always following your education anyway, but I didn't quite know, you know, what exactly you did. But I was so fascinated by your opening videos of your beauty stories, which we can touch on later, but also the way you're into education. So that sort of struck me, you know, because the way you do things is just absolutely amazing. So just like a little read off for people, like, you know, you're from Ireland, which is why we connected too, because I'm from Dublin and you live in France. But also, you know, yes, you have over 30 years experience in the industry, but you like work with one of my favorite all-time women in makeup, Pat McGrath. And she was the person that actually inspired me to go into makeup, you know, because of one thing she said to me when I said, oh, I'd like to assist you, or how do I get into this industry? And she said, here's my agent's number, contact them. So whether she was just being polite, at the end of the day, it gave me, as a young person who knew nothing about makeup, that sort of drive to just go knock on the door and try and work with her. Let's not talk about what happened then, because I never got to see the agency, but it really stuck in my mind. And I've always had utmost respect for her because she was so kind. But also you are the glow up judge in Ireland too. So that was amazing. So I'd like to hear your views on that. But if we can go back to the beginning, to your career, absolutely love your story. How did you get into makeup? You know, what is it for you?
I come from a family of painters. I also involved with theater, and I started in theater, and then I kind of didn't even know that there was like many makeup artists, I didn't really know at the time anyway that there was a career. I was doing a lot of painting, a lot of face painting, body painting. And then somebody told me, you know, you need to learn the craft. And so, yeah, I went to a school in Paris. I felt that when I went to the school, I was quite a rebel. I thought I was looking literally to work, you know, it wasn't a hobby. I was already working, but without any knowledge of craft. And so I really wanted to get the craft, and I really wanted to go out to work. So I felt that a lot of the people that were working with me in that school were actually not quite sure, maybe it was a bit of a hobby, or a lot of them were much younger than me. So I guess I was kind of frustrated with the atmosphere that was a little bit teenage-like. And so I was really, really demanding on my teachers, and they placed me in situations where finally I did get a foothold, if you wish, into the more professional aspect of the field. And I guess that was really the first thing that made me think about how important education is, and if, you know, how seriously it's approached. But I guess that the teacher only becomes great if the student is really hungry and demanding.
Yeah, that's it's very true. So how old were you, if you don't mind me asking?
Not at all. By the time I finished that school, I think I was 25. I was, you know, I'd already done jewelry design. I'd already done quite a few different, you know, aspects of a creative road, if you wish. And this was becoming very serious now. So I think I was, between 23, 24, 25, something like that.
But how did you know you wanted to be serious? Because a lot of people tend to just fall into it, but you really knew you wanted to do it. So what made you fall in love with makeup?
I think it was because it incorporated sculpture, color paint, pigment, and characters. So it kind of united, in a certain sense, theater, and the character making in theater, paint, obviously. And also it kind of, it works in the music world, which I was very, very much involved in as well, the characters in music videos and stuff like that. So it kind of seemed to answer a few of my curiosities at the time. And by the way, also wasn't thinking I would become, it would become my career. I gave myself a deadline.
Oh, right.
Like I thought, if this isn't working, or if I'm not good enough, or if I've made a mistake, I want to find out really fast. So I went at it really intensely for that, in that way,
Yeah, because I'm finding like nowadays, a lot of people, we'll go back to the past, but like makeup is so exposed right now and everybody really, really wants it. But I feel like maybe there is a gap there where they're not quite getting their right education because it's coming in from all different angles. So what do you think?
Well, I find it really interesting because every era is a new era. We've seen loads of diverse eras, even if you just talked about, social eras like punk rock or the new romantics or whatever it was, you know what I mean? And now when social media came in, of course, you get all these people who have a direct access to show their work. And obviously on Instagram, which is amazing because before then we were so dependent. The only difficulty is that through the independence of social media, in my mind anyway, you don't have as much access to teamwork and collaboration, right? So you can actually advance on your own. But the only way I learned my craft was thanks to rubbing up against people much better than me in all sorts of domains who pushed me to my limits and way and beyond my limits. But if I'm alone developing something with not enough interaction, there's going to be a moment where I'm going to be stuck. I'm going to be repeating myself. So truly, thanks to, I think if people could balance out this incredible independent access that they have with the opportunity to rub up against great people in their diverse fields, if they can collaborate, then I think that that's nearly the perfect recipe. Oftentimes anyway, getting that balance is the hardest thing to do,
Yeah. And, when I see, obviously you've assisted, we'll just touch a bit on Pat, because I feel like you've got great knowledge in assisting. So tell me how that came about.
Well, I think that because I had quite a few lucky breaks and luck doesn't fall from the sky. We know that, right? So, but anyway, you have to recognize how lucky you are also. And I got on to doing really, really important jobs very quickly. But in so doing, of course, it was nerve-wracking. And I was always asking myself the question of, what would somebody else do in this situation? How would they solve this problem? And I knew no one. I knew no other makeup artists, of course. And so the questions that I had would go around in my head. And I was just dying to be able to have a conversation with another makeup artist that would be friendly, that would be not just looking at me as their competitor trying to, I don't know, take their clients or something, but actually, like in theater or in cinema, when you're a crew and you're all working together and you're all brainstorming ideas, nobody's worried about delivering information that, you would be, susceptible to steal their knowledge. So it was a long, long, lonely path, but my profound, motivation was to find someone. And in so doing, I wanted to find someone that I would really respect. And at the time, Pat McGrath was really breaking rules. She wasn't at all as well known. This is a while back, but for those who had the eyes to see and those who were seeking as I was, of course, I remarked upon the rules that she was breaking. And I was so delighted with this, but I didn't know how to contact her, where she lived. I had no idea, but at least I did know that I did want to find a way to contact her. I actually eventually, I do believe that it's really important to dream and project yourself.
Yeah.
Because curiously enough, I was working one day and she was in the studio next to mine in Paris. And when I found out who the makeup artist was, I asked immediately, could I walk into the studio? And I knew the people, it's a small world. And I walked right up to her and I said, I want to thank you And I probably could be honest in thanking you for so many makeup artists. You're breaking the rules. It's so exciting. If ever you need a hand, there's my number. And she said to me, well, there's mine. And I said, no, I'll leave you with mine. And one day we'll possibly meet up when you really need a hand, you know?
I should have gave her my number.
It just so happened that way. And, you know, like people were saying to me, why didn't you keep her number? Why didn't you call her back? And I just said, you know, I think there's certain important encounters that you really hope that they go a different way than just simply calling them up and sending in your dossier or sending in your, you know, your work. I just was hoping that there would be just a, you know, a serendipity encounter here. That's what I thought. I mean, you know, we have magic in our heads, and that was mine. So yeah, and it happened a couple of years later.
So a couple of years later, she contacted you.
Yeah, I was contacted when I was in Milan. I was doing the shows, and she was starting off to do some important shows where, yeah, you need a crew, you know.
So when you were doing your shows there already in Paris, were you leading your shows, or were you still assisting?
Some of my shows I was leading, but in the same spirit of wanting to exchange with makeup artists, I was looking to exchange with really the best. I mean, I worked with Francois Nars, I worked with Kevin Aucoin, I worked with Fulvia Farolfi, I worked with, you know, people across the world. And the thing was that if I was going to be doing shows, to be doing them with great people, Linda Cantello as well, Topolino, these all became, not all of them, but some of them became real buddies and friends and, you know, sources of exchange. So we were all kind of helping each other out. And I'd also do some of my own shows. But truly, when you're starting off, and you could say this better than me, Lan, you've enough experience to say this, is that when you're starting off doing your own shows, you don't always get the budget to have the greatest crews. You don't have the budget, or they don't have the budget to have the greatest girls or whatever. And in walking into really big shows, you were having, thanks to assisting, you were having access to the greatest models, the greatest designers, the greatest shows. And if I was to apply this idea of polish yourself with the best to become your best, yeah, well, that was what really my endeavor was. So some people were out to get their own shows in their own name, but that wasn't my complete focus at all. It was the craft, you know, learning the craft and learning it through fun and exchange with really great people in every single domain, you know, the greatest hairdressers, etc., you know. So watching and being part of that is an extraordinary, you know, learning curve, as you can imagine.
Yeah. Oh, what a place to be in. Because I was on the other side of that, but I was assistant photographer when I was in that environment, and I didn't necessarily want to be a makeup artist. I was just doing it on the side. It just happened to hit me by accident and be inspired from you guys doing those shows. And in terms of like, from all the way back then to now, you know, like, what's your overall vibe, like feeling of the industry about makeup artists now in terms of I know there's different eras, but technique, you know, because you're very into like storytelling, mood boards, you know, really dissecting, because you're a designer too. So, you know. So
yeah, thanks to, you know, the privilege of being able to share in being in the back rooms, thanks to Pat inviting me in to help her design these shows and be part of a crew, by the way, a design team, if you wish. I realized that, you know, every designer wants obviously something unique, and that you're really at their service to try and deliver to them the maximum options, you know, the best possibilities to just go as far as you can. So nothing is off the table. If you didn't have a product, you invent it. If they're asking you, as we were asked at times from certain designers, you know, I hate makeup, do me a new no makeup. So then you're stripping right back, but you know yourself that we are in fashion. This is not about simply just saying, oh, okay, well, we'll do nothing. It's about being much smarter than that. So what I think that's going on now is a little bit like what I was saying, is that if you don't have people asking you to really research something, and people whom you respect, right, then you're going to get stuck in your own techniques. We all know this, by the way, nobody's different. And the luck is that collaboration, to meet up with people who are really demanding of themselves, naturally, and of you. And they trust you to be as demanding on yourself. So if you don't have pressure like that to actually surpass yourself, your chances of doing that are very low. There are some people, that are, like musicians that are trying to surpass themselves, etc. But they also are rubbing up against great sound engineers, great people who are pushing them. So I think that the solitude sometimes is a bit of a problem, and the trend of repetition is really high. I think you should never get stuck in a hole, and just make sure that, well, it depends on your curiosity. I mean, if you're in a certain area and you're happy to do that, that's brilliant. I really think that's great. But if you're curious, like, I and many others, by the way, about exploring new territories, looking for not the trend, but what might be a trend, what's coming, what's out there, trying to feel a pulse of something. At the moment, thanks to social media, we all kind of know there's been a trend, like it's called Instagram makeup and stuff like that. I don't look down on that. That's a trend. But I would never, ever have done 30 years in this field if I wasn't doing research. I would have been bored, because I would have gotten to a point where, yeah, I could have been repetitive, just doing over and over. But I would like to say one thing is that everybody does have a unique approach, and there's nothing bad about that. It's just, I would say, like in any creative field, never get lazy, never be self-satisfied or arrogant, take chances, take risks. But that means pushing the boundaries of what beauty is. So if you come in with a closed mind or an idea of that's it, you should not belong to fashion. Fashion is about change. For me, anyway, that's what I've learned.
Oh, no. I mean, I love that you say that, because I think fashion is one of those sort of many discussions that people have, because everyone loves the idea that they're trendy, they're in fashion, they're part of fashion. But what is fashion? Like people say, oh, well, I can't be in fashion because they're also snobby, or it's all trend led, or, but actually I feel like everyone is obsessed with fashion in some degree, and it's really important to just put it out there, like what you're saying.
Well, imagine fashion is a form of expression, just like music, just like writers, poets. It's a form of expression. It just is an exterior form of expression, and I believe that when I came into it, what I found the most valuable was uniqueness, not to look like, but to find out what it means to be unique. So when I naturally approach a face, I certainly do not want that face to look like. I'm trying to find out, what can I do to enhance or bring out the unique quality of this person in certain contexts, obviously. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's an adventure. It's not, oh, I'm just going to repeat what I did. And even when you're doing a fashion show and there is a look for the girls on the show, in the highest form of this, of the expression of makeup in fashion shows, it should be fitted like a glove. That person should look exquisite in their own unique way, because they were casted for this show for who they are, not something else. They were uniquely casted. So it's a really incredible adventure to say to yourself, it's a privilege to be at an arm's length from someone's face. It's a really intimate moment, right? And when you come in with a little bit of humility, a little bit of awe, a little bit of magic of that moment, wow, what an opportunity. By the way, it's challenging also, because, you're going to have to put your skills, your techniques, your tricks to use, because, it's challenging. You're on a deadline. You've got to perform at a very, very high level. The person might have gotten up on the wrong side of the bed. you know, you might have gotten up on the wrong side of the bed. So that's all another thing about professionalism and resilience and having these shoulders. But I wake up in the morning when I'm working, and my biggest challenge is, can I see the beauty?
Mhm.
Not the problem. I'm not a plumber. Sometimes, you know, you can wake up, you're tired, whatever. But the magic is, can I see the beauty? And I give myself that challenge, and then I go from there.
So how do
So,
you dissect it when you're, because obviously you can see the beauty, but when you've got that team, because you guys like look after hundreds and hundreds of models, and it's always obviously immaculate. And I know that, you know, as a makeup artist myself, I'll go around and look around and do the touch-ups. But, you know, if people are thinking, oh, you know, what, if you want an assistant, which is a normal question, everyone says, well, what do you look out for? I mean, over the time, you know, what is your major thing as a big no-no or a big yes? Apart from being organized, there has to be like a technical thing that you see.
Are you asking me what I'm looking for in an assistant?
Yeah.
Or
When they're on a show, you know, like physically, you know, when you've got everyone.
well, first of all, you know, you want somebody who's hungry to learn. And second of all, who's smart enough to read the room, know what's going on. I often tell an assistant, watch in a shoot or whatever, watch the assistants of all the best in here. In general, they have this knowledge of how to just guess what you need. They're in the right place at the right time, giving you the right thing. In the beginning, though, it takes time to work somebody in to figure that out. But, you know, first of all, you walk in and you observe. You know, on the very first show I did with Pat McGrath, I just observed. I was given no one to do. It's always a little bit of a meeting, like you know, you don't want anything to go wrong. And yet at the same time, it's like a measuring, it's like sumos. And at a certain point, you're going to have to act, because something's going to occur where you're going to have an opportunity to maybe make yourself useful. And in my case, for example, I think it was the first Versace show that Pat was doing. And there was a girl, as usual, that came in 10 minutes before the show. And I did the makeup with the hairdressers. The girl was, Pat seemed to be happy. She went out, and I was asked to come backstage with Pat to you know, set up the backstage with her. But I hadn't done anything up until there, but I wasn't freaking out. I just knew that, well, I was already pretty experienced by this point, but you have to have that capacity to observe, to be quiet, to make yourself useful at the right time, to guess what that person needs. So that means you're watching the person you're assisting all the time, everything they're doing over and above the cleanliness and the organization. Is why are they doing what they're doing? I mean, you really are scrutinizing the person you're working for, and you're actually trying to develop techniques. The very first time I had an assistant, after about a week, she said, you said to me, I could ask any question. And I said, yeah. She said, but I haven't asked you any questions. I said, yeah, that's true. And she said, but it's not that I don't have questions, it's because you keep on doing things differently. So I'm starting over every time, taking notes and not knowing when to ask the question. Yeah. And I thanked her. I said, well, thanks to you, I'm going to methodize my work so that I can actually have more assistants that feel more useful. You know, it's great to do a solo, but if you just do solos, very hard to be able to do large projects, right?
So true.
You know,
yeah.
It's wonderful to do a solo. It's exhausting. You know,
my poor assistants then, because every time they see me, like, your kit is always different. And I'm like, yeah, I'm just testing you. But it's because we get gifted so many products, you know, so we have to introduce them, otherwise we don't move forward, right?
I think that the person that's working with you has to be as hungry as you are, as demanding of yourself as you are, you know, and yeah, they have to have a discreet demeanor. You know, it's not about them. And by the way, I think that it's important also, makeup artists have to treat their assistants really well. And they have to recognize that vice versa. You know, there's this certain ethics of how to work together. You're right. It's a tough business. And sometimes people are really tough, and be it snobby or whatever, but it's often because of the pressure that people are under. It doesn't always show the best side of them. And some people don't deal with pressure well. And I have room for that when I'm watching people work. It's just I know that they can be highly gifted. But when the pressure comes on, it's tough. So I'm not really judgmental about the people I work with. And by the way, Pat McGrath, speaking of her, she's pretty renowned as being one of the most encouraging makeup artists there is. And like you said, she told you contact my agent or whatever. She was one of the very few that was really just down to earth, simple, get the job done, work hard, and just felt very, she spread the joy, excitement, the love, because she felt also all of those things. And she also felt, how lucky are we to be doing such a fantastic career. So that was kind of contagious. So the person who is the leader is contagious, and his team will reflect who's at the top, so.
Yeah, because you were with her for so long. I was just thinking, God, like we were probably in the same room and I didn't know you, because I never, ever noticed assistants. It was strange because I noticed Pat because someone pointed her out to me. And then I'd see the models, and my job was just to like get to know the models for the press. So it for me it was like, wow, she did stand out, but she was always happy. I always saw her, and but I never ever noticed their assistants. It was so strange, but I get it now. They just were all really good and sort of just did their own thing. But
I think that everybody, when you've got a well-oiled team, everybody's doing what they've got to be doing. No one is really about, me, myself, and I. There's a whole job being done, and there's a mutual respect going on here.
Yeah.
And if you're starting to notice all the assistants, that's kind of strange. It's just one machine that's really going on. I would say one thing though, a great attitude and great energy is really, really important when you're assisting anyone or working anywhere anyway.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you have that.
Well, sometimes I'm really quiet, and let my assistants do all the stuff for me, because when you're working nonstop, you just have to focus on one thing, and then your assistants have to be the ones to sort of just be your sort of guard in some way. Are you that person for Pat sometimes? Do you?
Yeah,
sorry.
I think that, it's a real reflection on you, is if you've got a great team that's actually just going about everything, they're not waiting on your last breath to do something out of, I don't know, fear or something.
Yeah.
It's a real reflection on you when you have a really incredibly independent, moving team, utterly respecting each other, etc. In each area, that each person is often gifted in a different way.
And if I say to you, the power of makeup, like in broader terms, not just as a makeup artist, because we know, like as makeup artists, what we can do for people, but for those listening, even if there's people, who I've got different versions of, like the Instagram makeup or the bridal makeup, from all those aspects, what is the power of makeup to you? What can people sort of? I think that
I kind of said it. I think the power of makeup is to enhance what's unique about a human being. And I think that we as makeup artists have an extraordinary superpower. And even if we're doing very little or a lot, that person gets up out of the chair and feels empowered themselves. Doesn't feel that they're dependent on you for the mask that you put on them, but you're revealing them to themselves. And that moment where that happens in front of the mirror, and you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You see the person's face light up.
Yeah.
And they see themselves. It's really moving. It's very moving. And they're just like really happy. Is this me? And you mightn't have done a lot. It's not about how much. It's that moment where you've really just managed to put your skills to the use of enhancing them, and they feel empowered at that moment. And somehow, some way, that job is done. Like, it's a wonderful feeling. I also do think that the power of makeup, there are certain areas that I think that should be explored the way, you know, people do give money to charity or things like that. I think that there's more to do with creating, like, I think L'Oreal created a day called Dress for Success, but I think Success Day, like, you know, women who are, I don't know, looking for jobs, or with, you know, the employment agencies or whatever, women in transition. I think there's a lot to do for women, for the power of makeup, you know. I think women who are in hospitalized situations, you know, I know that certain really great makeup artists that I know from London went and turned and specialized in working on people who had cancer treatments, and so very particular products. So I think that that extraordinary, wonderful, moving power of makeup and the power of the beauty that a person feels with themselves should be thought of to expand as far as we can go. I really think that that's something to think about.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you so much, Kathy. Just before we go, I just want to wrap up with, you know, your unique way of education. So is that a form of, for the listeners to follow? Is it more of an online platform?
I do online masterclasses, and I do these meetups. And the masterclasses are like either a one-off where we're just actually going to brainstorm together over work and review, critique, work on an aspect of the work, or we're going to do something like it's called the project, where we're going to develop over 4 meetings. I create these moments where we meet up over a certain theme, and this year the theme is skin, and I publish it on my Instagram, and people know when it's happening.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much.
And by the way, I found from meeting you on Clubhouse, you stood out immediately. You're really have a wide, broad view of the industry. You're very supportive. You give great advice to young makeup artists yourself. And I think that you've walked the walk. So what you say has credibility. I could hear it immediately, though we had only met, first of all, through our voices.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Thank you so much. And I hope to see you soon.
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, and good luck. Bye-bye now.
Thank you very much. Bye.